Good morning all, I am Joyeta Moietree, and as you can see, my today's topic is the digestive system. So, is it just me or you as well that when you heard the term digestive system for the first time, the thing that popped in your head was literally that we eat and the food somehow helps our body and then we excrete it? I have had that thought until I studied the digestive system. But as I've studied it, I found it one of the most interesting systems in biology so far I have studied. So yes, let's get a basic idea about the digestive system, because it is not just about eating and excreting the food. So digestive system, it has a purpose. So the main purpose of the digestive system is breaking the large food molecules that we eat into smaller food molecules so that they can be absorbed into the blood and used by the body. That is basically its main purpose. But if you have understood all these things, digestive system has got 4 vital steps. That is, number 1, ingestion, which is eating the food. Then number 2, digestion, which is breaking the large food molecules into smaller food molecules. Number 3, absorption, which is absorbing the smaller food molecules into the blood. And the last and the final one, which is assimilation, which is using the absorbed food molecules by the body so that the body can function. So these 4 steps are the ones that make up the digestive system. And yes, before we actually proceed into how the system works and everything, let's get a basic idea that what is this digestion. So digestion is basically always of 2 types. So digestion over here is of 2 types. First one is mechanical, and the second one, any guesses? Yes, chemical. Chemical. So these are the 2 types of digestion. But what are these? So we know that there are certain organs that is helping us in our digestive system. Suppose mouth. So what does mouth have? Teeth. So these teeth, this is a feature our mouth has. Our mouth have teeth, tongue, all these things. So mechanical digestion is the digestion that is helped by the organs with their features. So every organ that has feature, they have some feature, and that feature helps them to carry out the entire system. So that is a mechanical digestion by that organ. And chemical digestion is pretty simple, chemical reaction. Basically, we know the nutrients that are needed to be broken down, that is protein, fat, and starch. So there are certain enzymes in our organs, in certain parts of our organ, that basically breaks down these larger protein molecule, starch molecule, fat molecule, all these things into their simplest form. So now, if you have understood what I have spoken till now, I have a question to you all. That is, we understand the main motive of the digestive system. That is breaking the larger food molecules into the smaller ones. Very fine. But what is the point of having mechanical digestion if chemical digestion is already there? You see, chemical digestion is already breaking the protein molecule into their simplest form, amino acids. So what is the point of chewing the food and break it into smaller pieces? Because they are ultimately turning into the simplest form by the chemical digestion. Any idea? Any guesses? Well, probably you're right. That is, we all know that for any chemical reaction to take place, there are certain essential conditions. And one of them is surface area. We all know that. So when by mechanical digestion we are chewing the food, and so what is happening is the large food molecule, they are breaking down into a lot of smaller molecules. So by this, the surface area, the overall surface area of the molecules, they are increasing. So since surface area is increasing, the rate of chemical digestion is increasing. So this is a basically very basic idea about the digestion process. So now let's get started. So my today's topic, basically my part, starts from the point when the food reaches our stomach. But I will actually give a little flashback how the food reaches the stomach. This is because a certain part of the digestion actually takes place in our mouth. Surprising, right? Yes, I know. Basically, let's start with the mouth. What happens in the mouth? So, when we chew the food, obviously mechanical digestion in mouth is breaking them into smaller pieces. We chew it by our teeth. But our mouth has saliva released by the salivary gland. So basically the saliva digests some of the starch we eat in the mouth into a little simpler version. So some of the starch we eat is converted to maltose. For your reminder, maltose is not the simplest form. It is just a simpler form. Alright? So starch is converted to maltose by salivary amylase. This is done in mouth. So digestion in mouth is complete. And then by certain features mouth has, the tongue that makes the food into bowl shape so that peristalsis can occur. Peristalsis, we all know, it's a very essential part because it prevents the backflow of food. Again, I am not explaining peristalsis in the detail. But now, finally the food passes to our alimentary canal and reaches the stomach, from where my today's presentation, my topic starts. So, what happens when the food reaches the stomach? Our stomach wall is actually made up of gastric gland. We all heard the term gastric. So, this gastric gland reaches a substance called gastric juice. And gastric juice has the following substances, which is, first one is mucus, water, HCl, which is hydrochloric acid, and the last, pepsinogen. This is a term we don't really listen that often, but let's get to their uses. Mucus basically protects the lining of the stomach so that the hydrochloric acid that is released, it cannot damage the stomach wall. Alright? And now water, it is essential for every chemical reaction apparently. And hydrochloric acid, it has got a lot of functions. First of all, hydrochloric acid, it basically kills the germs present in any of our food. Secondly, it converts the inactive pepsinogen to active pepsin. So we have got another reaction, that is pepsinogen, which is inactive, is converted to pepsin, which is active, by hydrochloric acid. But what is the point of doing all these things? We will get to know. Wait. We have lack of space. So let's do this. So yes, we know that the hydrochloric acid converts the inactive pepsinogen to active pepsin. But pepsin is not something we eat. So what is this? Yes, it is a protein digestive enzyme. So pepsin is a protein digestive enzyme and it is the active form. So what happens is the protein we eat is converted to polypeptides. Polypeptide is not the simplest form of protein, but a little simpler one, by pepsin. It is enzyme. And in fact, hydrochloric acid actually provides a proper pH for the pepsin to work properly. So hydrochloric acid is really important. So now we are done with the digestion in stomach, but yes, again you remember, we are done with the chemical digestion, not the mechanical one. So what can be the mechanical digestion of stomach? Yes, mechanical digestion is when the stomach wall, it basically churns and mixes the food well with the gastric juice. So basically that is very important and it turns the food into creamy chine. So that is the mechanical digestion of stomach. So we are done with digestion in stomach. Now let's go to small intestine. I'm writing the small intestine as SI. I hope it's not a problem. But actually, before starting to talk about the digestion in small intestine, let's see what we have here. Until small intestine, we have some of the starch converted to maltose and some of the protein converted to polypeptides. That is what we have. Now, the small intestine has got three parts. That is duodenum, jejunum and ileum. And when the food reaches the duodenum of the small intestine, the two things occur. That is, we know an organ called liver. So liver produces a substance called bile and it is pretty alkaline. So what happens is the bile from the liver is temporarily stored in the gallbladder. So when the food reaches the duodenum, bile from gallbladder and pancreatic juice from pancreas reaches the duodenum. Why? We will get to know it soon. So, we all know the basic information about small intestine now. So, let's get started with digestion in small intestine. So, I have mentioned about bile. So, what happens is bile, it helps to digest fat. And as I have said, bile is alkaline. So, it provides the proper pH for digestion in small intestine. And pancreatic juice, it provides all the enzymes. So they are here with certain purpose, not just out of nowhere. Alright, so let me give you information that by the time the food passes the duodenum and goes to jejunum, all the food must be digested. So in the duodenum, everything must be digested into their simplest form. So let's get started with protein. Yes, so here is another enzyme. Trypsinogen, we all know it's inactive. It is converted to trypsin by the help of, it is a coenzyme, enterokinase. Enterokinase is a coenzyme. So, trypsin is the active form of another protein digestive enzyme. So, what happens is trypsin converts some of the protein to polypeptides. But why is it polypeptides? Protein is already converted to polypeptides, right? You must have forgotten because I said some of the protein was converted to polypeptide in the stomach, not all. So the protein that was not converted to polypeptide is converted to polypeptide now by the help of trypsin. And lastly, all the protein is converted to polypeptide. Now, finally, all the polypeptide will be now converted to the simplest form of protein, which is amino acids, by the help of another enzyme, which is erepsin. I know this enzyme names is kind of very confusing, but don't worry, it's not that hard. Alright, so protein is completely digested now in the duodenum. Now what is left? Starch and fat. They are still needed to be digested, right? But before we move to starch, as you can see, I need to change the page. I hope the digestion system is really fun because although these enzyme names, they are pretty boring, but it is really fun when you understand the entire system. Alright, now our protein is digested. Let's get started with starch. So, let's start with starch. What happens for starch? As we have said, some of the starch was converted to maltose in the mouth, not all. So, the starch that was not converted to maltose in the mouth is now converted to maltose by the help of intestinal amylase. And now all the maltose is converted to the simplest form of starch, which is glucose. Alright, by the help of what? Maltase. So all the glucose is digested, protein digested, glucose digested. Now left with the last one, fat. Fat is pretty easy. All the fat is digested to fatty acid. or glycerol by the help of lipase. So now, in the duodenum, all of the digestion is complete. Alright, protein is totally digested, starch is totally digested, and also fat. So now, digestion process is done. So are we done with it? Are we done with the presentation? Yes, we are done. Are you sure? Did you forget, digestion is not the last process. The last process, next process is absorption. Absorption is yet left. So we now know that all the food molecules, they are from large molecules, they are converted to small molecules. Now what is left is absorption, which means absorbing the small food molecules into the blood. So then, as I have said, small intestine has got three parts: duodenum, jejunum, ileum. I have said that before. So in the duodenum, all the digestion is done. Now the food passes through the jejunum and goes to the ileum. In the ileum, they have got some structure. This is basically called an adaptation by the small intestine. That is, they have got some finger-like structure called the villi and microvilli. Why are they present? They are basically present to increase the surface area, because more the surface area, better the absorption. I know the shape of villi is kind of confusing, so I'll show you an image. Wait a minute. So, I hope you can see. This is something the villi look like. They are finger-like structure. And if you can have a close look, you can see that they contain some blood capillaries, right, inside. So yes, I hope I can remove it now. So what happens is, the smaller molecules, which is the glucose and the amino acids, they basically from the villi diffuse into the blood capillaries present in the villi, and then the blood capillaries, they carry it around the body. So glucose and amino acid, they are absorbed into the blood. Now left with fat, but fat is a bigger molecule because fatty acid and glycerol. So what happens is, fatty acid and glycerol, they combine together and they form fat globules, which is carried by the lacteal, which is also in the villi. Alright, so everything is absorbed in the small intestine. Now the food that was undigested, which means that was not converted to smaller molecules, they pass into the large intestine. Alright, so I think many of us, we have this misconception that when we hear the term large intestine, the only thing that comes in our head is digestion. Alright, but I have learned for the first time by studying this system that the main purpose of the large intestine is actually absorption. What they do is, the large intestine, it absorbs the water or some nutrients like iron, vitamin B, vitamin K from the waste products. And when they are absorbed, then the waste products pass out as excretion. So done. Absorption in small intestine is done. Absorption in large intestine is done. Now the final term comes, which is assimilation. That is using the absorbed food molecules by the body. So we actually have a basic idea about this because we all know the uses of protein, starch, fat. We all know the uses. But how is it used by the body? So what happens is, I have mentioned before that the blood capillaries, they carry the amino acid molecules and the glucose molecules. They carry it and transport it around the body, right? But where does it go? So what happens is, the blood capillaries from the villi, they carry it to the liver and by the hepatic portal vein. So the name is pretty cool, hepatic portal vein. So in the liver, what happens is, the glucose, we all know it is very necessary for respiration to take place. So some of the glucose is used for respiration, and then some of the other glucose, which is not used for respiration, it is converted to glycogen by the help of insulin released by the pancreas. So why is it done? Why is again glucose converted to glycogen? For your information, glycogen is the insoluble form of glucose. This is because if glucose is in the blood, because it is soluble in blood, so what happens is, the blood concentration, it does not stay constant. So if it does not stay constant, then it is really harmful for the other organs, like kidney diseases can take place if the blood concentration is not constant. So when there is excess of glucose in blood, the excess glucose is converted to glycogen, and when there is lack of glucose in blood, again to maintain the blood concentration, the glycogen is converted back to glucose by the help of glucagon. So this is basically done to maintain the blood concentration level. And yes, I have said some of the glucose. So the other, a very few amount of glucose is then converted to fat. And we know fat is stored under our skin. So yes, done with the uses of glucose. Now comes amino acids, which means protein. So it has got very known uses, common uses we know. That is amino acids, they are used to make hormones, then new protoplasm, etc. Basically all the uses of protein. But this very useful substance, which is amino acid, if it is excess in our body, then it is very harmful. So what happens is, in the liver, the excess amino acid, it is converted to less harmful substances, which is called urea and uric acid. But then again, if urea and uric acid is excess in our body, then also it is harmful. So then that's why basically excretory system takes place. Urea and uric acid, it is carried to the kidney, and that is basically another very broad system, that is excretion. So yes, we are now clear of what happens with amino acids and glucose. And we know that fat is stored under our skin, sometimes near the kidneys, near the heart. So yes, we are done with the usage of the body of these nutrients. And with that, we are done basically with all the 4 essential topics, basically steps that actually make this digestive system so important. Ingestion, digestion, absorption, and assimilation. So yes, we are basically done with digestive system. And honestly speaking, this system is very broad, and I couldn't speak to the depth about this topic mainly for 2 reasons. First of all, I don't know this topic to the depth at this level, and second of all, we have certain time constraints. So I limited this topic as small as I could. So yes, we are done for today, and the main target of my presentation was basically to help you for revision of digestive system, because it is one of the hardest system and it's very big to remember. So if any of you could revise the digestive system by the help of my presentation, my today's target is successful. And obviously the time around us is not really good, so obviously stay home, stay safe, and we all know recently our Bengali New Year has passed, so সবাইকে বাংলা বাসি নববর্ষের শুভেচ্ছা. And yes, we are done for today. Thank you for listening.